with BertOgden.com, Jeff Malden.
Any of our luxury brands, and quite frankly, Sergio, any of our brands, after the COVID hit us last year, dramatically expanded our digital retailing abilities. For those consumers at the time that wanted to make sure they stayed safe, didn't want to put themselves at unnecessary risk, they were able to go online, pick their car, evaluate a trade-in, negotiate payments, submit a credit application, even more so just recently, actually have it go directly to the bank, get an approval, an exact interest rate, and we're in the process of rolling out now being able to digitally sign contracts. You can do just about everything from the comfort and safety of your own home. And for those people that, quite frankly, just don't want to come into the dealership, we'll now even take the car directly to them in our new fancy enclosed trailer, delivered all right to their front door.
Do you take lots of pictures of the vehicles?
All of our vehicles online have an average of 35 to 40 pictures. Obviously, the vehicles that have a little bit more specialty equipment, we're going to accentuate those and make sure we highlight those for consumers to see. We've had a lot of the customers that want additional details about the vehicle. So we'll have our business development center representatives go out to the vehicles with their cell phones and do walk around and informative videos on the specific car that the customer is interested in and send that to them. We'll even take the vehicles to them for a remote test drive so that they can, again, from the comfort and safety of their surroundings, we'll sanitize the vehicle before it leaves, take it to them, whether that's a place of business or their home, sanitize it again in front of them, allow them to experience the vehicle to confirm that that's what they want.
That's news to me. I didn't realize that you did those visitations, a test drive.
Absolutely. Hey, if you can get HEB to home deliver your groceries, why can't we home deliver your car and give you an opportunity? Although I don't think HEB will let you sample it and then take it back.
Yeah, let me taste that sandwich, see if it's really good. Oh, no, I want a different flavor. Bert Ogden and Fiesta dealers of the Valley can home deliver a test drive, purchase, and lease. You choose the vehicle. It all starts at BertOgden.com.
From the KURV Broadcast Center in McAllen, Texas, in the mighty Rio Grande Valley, this is a KURV Community Special.
Let's do this!
COVID vaccine and educational special. Powered by Bert Ogden Fiesta dealerships of the Rio Grande Valley.
Well, look who it is.
Here's Sergio Sanchez.
And we appreciate you tuning in. You can also join us during this program. The clock is counting, 53 minutes left. You can participate in this KURV news special. Again, COVID vaccines, and looks like we have another one just around the corner. And yes, we're focusing on education as well. Today's panelists are new superintendent from Harlingen Schools, Dr. Alicia Noyola, also Dr. James Castillo. He's our Cameron County Health Authority, and Dr. Mack is back. It's another Mack attack. Dr. Joseph McCormick, infectious disease pro, UT Health Science Houston at Brownsville. I'm Sergio Sanchez, along with Davis Rankin and Roxanne Flores. Zach Cantu behind the scenes. He's taking care of the online broadcast. Again, News Talk 710 KURV, Facebook Live. Post a question or comment off air with producer Freddie at 800-580-8255. Okay, Roxanne, go ahead.
Just want to say hi to everybody joining us and to all those listening. My first question is to you, Dr. Castillo. Can you please give us a status COVID report for the hospitals in Cameron County?
Across the valley, hospitalizations have been steadily coming down. We're up around the mid 700s at the peak. And now we're in the mid 300s and trending down. There's still people getting admitted every day with serious COVID. There's people in the hospital who are getting into the ICU, but there's more who are getting better and getting discharged. So in general, good trend like we're seeing across the state.
Recently, the Cameron County judge and Hidalgo County judge opened up a little more. Dr. Castillo, do you expect that trend to continue?
Yeah, I do. You can kind of see the pattern in waves, and I think we're on the downside of our, big second wave here. But still, there's over 300 people hospitalized. There's still people getting sick enough to get put in the hospital. But in general, the trend is definitely headed in the right direction.
And that's a valley-wide number, right, Dr. James?
That's a valley-wide number. That's not just for Cameron County.
All right. What are the metrics that you and your colleagues in Hidalgo County are watching to say, okay, gang, we're good. It's time to open up schools full time? What are those numbers you're looking for?
In terms of schools, I think what we're seeing more is that as long as you can keep the distancing and those precautions about masks in place, that works. The question is how to handle that at a bigger scale. So I think the schools have been doing an amazing, excellent job in keeping everybody safe. And as we look into the fall, I would imagine, having more vaccines out there and seeing, are we going to be dealing with any other waves? It'll give a lot more confidence going into the next school year, I think.
That's Dr. James Castillo, or Cameron County Health Authority. Davis, I know you got a question for Dr. Mack.
Dr. McCormick, what do you think about the expected approval soon of the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine?
Well, I think that the handwriting is on the wall today. The FDA said that it was safe and effective, and typically by Friday they will probably approve it for the emergency use authority. And I think that means that's good news, because now we'll have a vaccine, another vaccine, a third one in the mix, and they're expecting probably 2 or 3 million doses at least by the end of March. I suspect it'll be more than that. But I think the big news about this vaccine is it can be stored between 4 and 8 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature of our refrigerators. It's much more stable because it's a different kind of vaccine, even though it works through and makes the same kind of antibody, but it's a different kind of vaccine. So it's more stable. And one dose means that we can get people pretty well protected. At least it had 80%, 86% effectiveness against severe disease with one dose. So that's all very, very encouraging. And I think it just means that we're going to have more vaccine out there for more people.
Okay. Do I need to turn to Dr. Noyola?
Or we want to, let's say hi to our new superintendent for Harlingen. Go ahead, David.
That's right. Dr. Noyola, how do you think, because you're new to this, how do you think Harlingen schools have been handling the pandemic so far? What do you think has been good, and what do you think that would need improvement?
So actually, I'm new into the superintendent role, but I was in HCISD for a number of years, and so worked very closely with Dr. Castillo as we began opening our schools back in September.
Yeah.
And
but
so,
now you can say what you've been wanting to say, but you couldn't.
I'm ready now. So, the last year, the state of Texas basically gave school districts the authority to open schools to whatever degree they felt would be appropriate. And so we left that option up to our families to make that decision. And so we had some families that from the onset said, I'm ready to send my children back. And then there were families that said, I'm just not comfortable at this moment. I'm going to opt for remote instruction. And so at any point in time in our school system, parents always have the option to return their children back. As we look at what has worked, I will tell you that, very early on when we were opening up our school districts, there was a lot of fear with regard to student transmission. And actually, we have not seen that manifest itself. And I think that has been more so because of the protocols that we instituted very early on. The social distancing, the masks, the hand washings, the cleaning. We had shields on students' desks. There was a lot of protocols that were put in place. And I think because of those protocols, the student-to-student transmission has been minimal. And I think that type of environment has really increased the number of students that we've had coming back into our school system. I think right now we're a little bit over 50% of our students that are participating in face-to-face instruction. I think where we saw more increases in transmission, well, I shouldn't say transmission in the schools, but we did have more adults that were coming forward with COVID. But it was not COVID that was acquired in the schools. It was what was happening at home. Very, very minimal transmission within the schools. I could probably on two hands count the total number of people where there was transmission that happened in the school. It was people that were coming in that acquired it elsewhere that wound up coming into the schools. But even when we had people that were coming forward from having acquired it outside of the school system, even when they came in, we did all our contact tracing. We were rarely able to identify transmission within the school system. So I think the things that have worked very well have been the protocols that we instituted from the very beginning. I think that has built a lot of confidence in our students and in our families. I think the area that we still need to work on, and it's not COVID related, it's really more about how do you provide the highest quality instruction to students in a remote setting. Anybody that has children at home know that it works very well for some students and it doesn't work well for others. And so it's trying to find how do we meet the needs of students that are not in the classroom so that they can receive the instruction that best works for them. And so protocols work well. We're still working the instructional side of the house for students.
That is Dr. Alicia Noyola, our new superintendent for Harlingen CISD. I know you had a follow-up question, Roxanne. Go ahead.
I do. And just to kind of recap, you mentioned that 50% of Harlingen kids are back now in school. But I wanted to ask you, Doctor, about teachers. How many teachers have been vaccinated? And are kids and staff asking for that to be done before all kids return back to schools?
So talking about vaccinations first, and so we're obviously working closely with the county. In fact, a lot of our nurses have been working with county in being vaccine administrators, and so we recognize that there's a greater good with regard to the role that our nurses can play outside of just our schools. So they've been playing a role in that. But currently, we are still working with our county, and at this point, we have vaccinated our staff that is 65 and older. We work very closely with county, and so county was able to work with us in providing an opportunity for all of that staff to go through that process. We have all of our nurses that have been vaccinated. They were part of that 1A group very early on. Harlingen happened to have been selected by the state as a rapid test school district. And so all of our rapid test administrators who bear such a critical responsibility in being able to identify anytime we have potential issues, that group was vaccinated as well. But in the grand scheme of things, it's still a small percentage. We have almost 3,000 employees, 2,800 give or take. And so that's still a small percentage. We did, in fact, we conducted a survey last week, I want to say, of all of our staff, just basically asking what was the interest in vaccination. And so we had about 1,300 to 1,500 staff that said, I would like to be vaccinated. And out of that group, we also identified who has underlying conditions, because that will be the next phase, right? And so we have about 500 or so. And so as the county moves forward with their COVID vaccine administration, fortunately, we have great partnerships with the county and with the city. And so our teachers are following along in those. Now, with regard to your question, is there a requirement? At this point, there is not. But would it provide our teachers a stronger sense of confidence and safety if and when all of our students come back? Absolutely. And so, we look for every opportunity where we can get our staff vaccinated.
Yeah. And just to make sure I got the numbers right, Dr. Noyola, you said staff, folks on payroll, about 3,000, right?
It's about 2,800, give or take.
All right. And you had about just north of a third, right, that have been involved in vaccination program, which I think that number is pretty consistent with what we hear on the medical side. Let me go to Dr. James Castillo. Again, you're listening to Newstalk 710 KURV, also live on Facebook, 710 KURV. You can post comments, questions there. Dr. James Castillo is our Cameron County Health Authority. Dr. James, what would you say is the tally right now, the census on first responders, doctors, nurses, nursing home, employees, all these people? Are we also there about north of a third or maybe half that have volunteered to receive a vaccination for COVID?
In terms of healthcare, it's probably more than 3/4, probably north of 3/4. It's not mandated. I don't know anybody who's making it mandatory. It's really appropriate that people should make that choice on their own. But as more information is coming out, a lot of those people, healthcare professionals who are hesitant, are now getting the vaccine as it's still being offered to them. So that number has gone over 3/4. I think everybody else, it's really about a lack of availability. A lot of the early vaccines were concentrated in the hospitals, getting the first shipment. And there's still a whole lot of healthcare professionals who work outside of the hospital settings. So getting it to them has been a bit of a challenge now. I still think that there's more people who want it and can't get it than maybe the other way around.
To the best of your knowledge, is it required of all health professionals in Cameron County at all hospitals and clinics to get this vaccination, much like flu season? They're required to get the flu shot.
No, there's no requirement for it. Right now the vaccines are under an emergency use authorization. And looking at like that, I feel very confident in the science behind it, in the data. But it's still an emergency use authorization. And certainly nobody should make that mandatory. Like the flu vaccine has been made mandatory at hospitals for a long time now. But there's still people who may choose not to get it. Different employers have, the right, as a right to work state, they have the right to set that as a condition. But usually they offer some sort of accommodation, like you must wear a mask if you don't get the flu vaccine. And I think right now, I think the mask is the mandatory part of this.
Then forward. That's Dr. James Castillo.
I have a follow-up, if I might.
Eric, I thought you had your hands up, but I didn't know if you were trying to land aircraft.
I was saying, don't shoot. I'm on the radio right now.
Right.
Is there any proven case or even suspected case of transmission of the virus by a hospital professional?
Yeah, there are people who acquire COVID while in the hospital. We don't know if it's how exactly it happens. That's one of the reasons why we also limit visitors in the hospital. Here in the Valley, when people are sick in the hospital before COVID, it wouldn't be unusual for me to have 20, 30 family members in a room. It gets pretty tight.
Yeah.
If we do that these days, it's difficult. The same kind of rules were applied to nursing facilities. And when you see those restrictions, we know it's painful, but one of the reasons is we need to reduce the risk of transmission in the hospital. And even with strict visitation restrictions, there have been cases where I find patients do develop it. It is rare, and it's not a good reason to avoid seeking health care. I know that was a big reason why people may have wanted to avoid going to the hospital, but heart attacks are probably quite much more life-threatening than this illness. So ignoring that chest pain because you're worried about COVID is not a good math.
You're listening to KURV News Special. We're talking about COVID-19 vaccines. We got another one on the way, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, more than likely to be approved. Also, we're talking about education. We understand that the Texas Education Agency has told parents that if your kids will take that STAR test, it needs to be on campus. So all kids back to campus to do that very soon. So our guest today, Dr. Alicia Noyola, our new superintendent for Harlingen Consolidated Independent School District, Dr. James Castillo, our Cameron County Health Authority, and Dr. Joseph McCormick, Infectious Disease Pro, UT Health Science Center, Houston, at our Brownsville office. Your questions welcome off air at 800-580-8255. Also post your questions at News Talk 710 KURV Facebook Live. Today's special broadcast made possible by Burt Ogden and Fiesta Dealerships in the Valley. From BurtOgden.com, Jeff Malden, we're talking about not only luxury vehicles, but all vehicles. You can choose online, BurtOgden.com, do pretty much the entire transaction. End of the day, there you go. You got your brand new vehicle.
This is a process we've been looking at for a number of years, the Burt Ogden organization. And we were looking at designing our own tool and working with vendors and so forth. Prior to the pandemic, we worked so hard to try to make it perfect that we never rolled anything out. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hit and people wanted cars, but they didn't want to leave their house. They didn't want to go into an environment that they weren't certain was clean. They didn't want to put themselves at risk. And so all of a sudden, perfection went out the window. We needed to provide this service for our customers. And it's funny, I was just looking at Automotive News, and they were talking about people prior to the pandemic that were willing to shop, at least go to submit credit information online, was about 30%. Now it's jumped up into like 60% of the people want to do that. And right now, their latest studies, this is from cars.com, talked about 50% of the people prefer arranging all of their financing and stuff online prior to coming to the dealership. I think a lot of it now, Sergio, is more about efficiency. unfortunately, regulations and just the process of purchasing a car takes a lot of time. So when a customer can do a lot of the shopping, do a lot of the tire kicking, and really get a sense of what they want prior to coming to the dealership, and now if they can get a value for their trade, already lock down the interest rate that they're going to get from financing, know their exact monthly payments, and really the only variable is driving the car and making sure they like it and then signing. Well, now you've cut that process that could take, 4, 5, 6 hours, sometimes all day, to maybe an hour, hour and a half actually in the store. Even once this pandemic kind of calms down and everything goes back to our new level of normal and we can start seeing everybody's faces again, I don't see this going away. Customers doing a certain percentage of it up to the point where they come online. And I see a lot of people, quite frankly, doing it the whole way. So I don't have to go to a car dealership again and I can still buy a car and still enjoy the process without the hassles. I'm in.
It's a real value. It's a real convenience. It's part of the brave new world that we're in. Shop for, choose, lease, or purchase. It all starts at bertogden.com, and they deliver to you.
710 KURV, streaming live at KURV.com. Powered by Texas Mutual Workers Compensation Insurance, a policyholder-owned company. Work safe, Texas.
You're in tune with another KURV news special made possible today by Bert Ogden and Fiesta dealerships in the Valley. We're talking about the COVID vaccines in the community, also talking about education and TEA requirements, saying all kids need to go back to school, the ones taking the STAR test. Our guest today, Dr. Alicia Noyola, our new superintendent for Harlingen Schools, Dr. Joseph McCormick, infectious disease pro, UT Health Science, and Dr. James Castillo. I'm Sergio Sanchez, along with Davis Rankin and Roxanne Flores. Okay, Roxanne, go ahead.
This question is for Dr. McCormick. Dr. McCormick, Dr. Castillo mentioned earlier that the trend is down across the valley. And I wanted to ask you, is the trend down because of people getting the vaccine, herd immunity, mix of both? What is it?
So it's not likely to be the vaccine. This is a subject of substantial discussion across the country because it's not just in Texas and in our area, but other across the country. And many feel that it's now the much more widespread use of what's been recommended for a long time, the use of masks, social distancing, staying out of crowds, that really is probably having the biggest impact. That's not to say vaccines are not having any, but we don't have the level of vaccination yet, and we certainly don't have the level of herd immunity that people also talk about. So it's likely to be that practices are better, but I think on the horizon are these variants that we have to start worrying about. And I think the jury is still out about what effect they're going to have, both in terms of the pandemic, but also in terms of the effectiveness of our vaccines and to some degree our treatment, because I was just going to mention that the hospitals now, at least in Cameron County, are having what seems to be pretty good success with these monoclonal antibodies. They haven't treated an enormous number of people, but they've treated well over 100. And those are people who are at risk, and they're treated early, and rarely do they come back to the hospital. So I think that's a bit of good news.
That's Dr. Joseph McCormick, our infectious disease pro, UT Health Science Center. Davis, I know you got a follow-up for Dr. James.
There was a story today about the California variant being maybe the big bug. I can't think of it. The big bug. They were very concerned about it. Why? What's up with that?
So California, this virus mutates, and when it mutates, it seems to get some advantages to it. Either it's more contagious, or it gets some sort of advantage to its survival, and it beats out some other ones. And so it looks like they found a variant in California that gives it some of that extra contagious advantage. In other words, one person's able to infect a lot more. They're not sure if it's the mutation that does it or if it's just luck on the virus's half, like it got into a wedding or it got into a big event, but it's making up a good portion of their cases and it's growing, and it might be associated with more hospitalizations. And I think that's the same thing they found in the UK on the B117 variant. So every time you see this virus mutate, the next question is, can it cause reinfections? Can it escape the vaccine? What about our monoclonal antibody treatments? Like Dr. McCormick was saying, that's been one of the things we did in the county this time around, is we have that infusion center. The hospitals weren't, geared up to really do that. By definition, to get that treatment, you cannot need to be in the hospital. So it was kind of weird to give it to the hospital. So we had the infusion center, treated well over 1,100 people actually, and had very few hospitalizations and these high risk people. So that's been great. But we know that the variants don't respond as well to these monoclonal antibody treatments. So one of our only prevention measures could also be threatened by these variants.
Is this normal? This kind of normal in a vaccine, in a virus?
Yeah,
Doctor. Certainly for Davis, certainly for this virus, it is, as you know, it's an RNA virus. Those are the viruses that mutate the most. And this is evolution, basic evolution in action. And what Dr. Castillo was saying was just right. The virus mutates, and those mutations that confer more infectiousness and more rapid transmission are the ones that will outcompete the others. And so sometimes they can mutate. And after all, that's the basis of our measles vaccine and our mumps vaccine and our rubella vaccine. Those are all viruses that have been mutated to the point that they're weak. You can give them to somebody, they don't become ill, but they develop an immune response that protects them. So we haven't figured out how to do this for this virus because it mutates so tremendously, and we're probably going to continue to see these variants until we get the vaccine and enough people that we can reduce the transmission. Mutation is a statistical event. The more replications of the virus you have, that is, the more people get infected, the more mutations you have, and the more likely you are to get a mutation that actually spreads more easily and/or may cause more severe disease.
Okay.
That is our infectious disease pro. We're lucky to have him here in the Rio Grande Valley from UT Health Science Houston or Brownsville office. Dr. Joseph McCormick, along with Dr. James Castillo, our Cameron County Health Authority, and our new superintendent for Harlingen Schools, Dr. Alicia Noyola. We're talking about, yes, COVID-19, also the vaccines that are in the area, and yes, education and trying to get kids back into the classroom. Your calls, comments, welcome, 800-580-8255. Your questions, welcome as well at News Talk 710 KURV Facebook Live. I'm Sergio Sanchez, along with Roxanne Fotis and Davis Rankin. You and family, join us on the broadcast. We've got about 26 minutes left in the program. 800-580-8255. Today's program made possible by Bert Ogden and Fiesta Dealerships. Today's KURV News Special made possible by friends at Bert Ogden and Fiesta Dealers. And we all reflect on the recent news events that we are literally thawing out from. Today was a special day of caring at Bert Ogden Arena. Here again, Jeff Malden from BertOgden.com.
And Sergio, I've got to take a second here and kind of give a shout out to the Rio Grande Valley as a whole, the bad weather that we had to go through and how so many people rallied in support of each other. I mean, another thing that kind of comes to mind was the food drive that we did that allowed almost $400,000 in donations and support and fed like 3,500 carloads that came through. And again, all that stuff was donated, and there were lots of people that participated from local businesses and grocery stores and banks and so forth. So it's just kind of for me, another testament to the humanity that we have here in the Valley and our sense of community and our willingness to support our brothers and sisters in their time of need. The library opening up so people can come in and get warm and charge their phone. We were telling that to customers. You don't have power? Come down to the dealership. We've got power. Sit in our waiting area, bring some food, charge your phone, watch a little TV, try to get a little sense of normalness and all this craziness. So I was really touched at how well we did come together and how we reached out to help each other.
Crazy times. Good to know that you guys are there for Valley families. And as folks visit any and all campuses for Bert Ogden, COVID-19 protocol still in effect, masks.
Yep.
Surface cleaners.
Got to wear your mask. Got to get your temperature taken. We sanitize the vehicles. We're not letting down. We're by no means out of the woods yet. We're starting to see some bright points with infections and hospitalizations going down, but we've still got a ways to go, Sergio.
A very big thanks to all the Bert Ogden family and Bob and Janet Vacker for their support of today's KURV News Special.
News, I'm Steve Rappaport. President Biden signing an executive order to review shortages in America's supply chain of critical items like personal medical equipment and semiconductor chips that power cars, phones, and other goods.
It's nice to have everybody down here and on a subject matter we all agree on and figure out how we can get it all done.
The president speaking to reporters before a bipartisan meeting with lawmakers. The FDA says Johnson & Johnson's single-dose vaccine is safe and about 66% effective in protecting against severe COVID-19.
On Friday, the FDA's advisory committee meets to decide whether or not to recommend it for emergency use, which would clear the way for the FDA to make a final decision. White House COVID response coordinator Jeff Zients says if that approval happens, they anticipate allocating 3 to 4 million doses next week.
Fox's Tanya J. Powers. America is listening to Fox News.
News, talk, enough said. News Talk 710 KURV, KURV.com.
Time is 4:36. This is News Talk 710 KURV, the News Talk Authority for South Texas. We are honored that you tune in. We invite you to join us on your smart device, your phone, your tablet, your desk computer at Facebook Live 710 KURV. You can post a question, comment for this KURV news special, talking about the COVID vaccines and also education issues for South Texas. Our guest, Dr. Alicia Noyola from Harlingen Schools, Dr. James Castillo, Cameron County Health Authority, and our infectious disease pro for South Texas, Dr. Joseph McCormick. Roxanne, back to you.
This question is for Dr. Castillo. Dr. Castillo, we mentioned that the trend overall is down across the valley, across the state, and across the country, really. But what about the number of new infections? That's one. And the second part of that question is, what does that number say about the work we still need to do to overcome the COVID-19 season?
The weather last week definitely is interfering with our data. People weren't getting tested. I don't know what that's going to do to transmission numbers over the next few weeks. I would imagine it would actually decrease it. There was less people going out, less people doing things. But again, the new infections are down, around 60 a day over the past 4 or 5 days. There's a trend in I noticed a lot of teenagers testing positive lately. I'm not exactly sure what that is. I'm still looking for the post Super Bowl type of spread, and I haven't been seeing that. But the trend is, definitely headed in the right direction.
We should be fine with any Super Bowl infection. Cowboys were in the Super Bowl yet again, so I think we'll be fine here in South Texas. Let's go back to Davis Rankin.
A question for Dr. Noyola of the Harlingen School District. Any changes you all have made to the upcoming Easter or spring breaks or the school calendars in general?
Not in this spring. We did make adjustments. When we first came back, we actually brought students back in waves, in essence. And then we did make adjustments right after the Christmas break, where we gave our families the option to be able to learn remotely. So we've made adjustments, but we too have been monitoring the numbers as we go forward. And so based even within our own numbers in our school district in terms of identified cases, the numbers are much lower than what we'd had in the past. And so at this point, we're not seeing necessarily a need to make those types of adjustments moving forward. Although we are evaluating just our calendars as a whole as we look at this year, and then our calendar in particular for next year as we look at addressing some of the instructional gaps that we anticipate we may see.
Dr. Joseph McCormick, hesitation that has been expressed by some folks, I know there were a couple of polls, University of Houston did one, there were others out there. Some folks, I believe it was 1/5, maybe a fourth, saying that they don't expect to get that vaccine at all. Some people in the medical profession saying something similar. I think the number was much lower for them as well. What would you say to anyone expressing apprehension to getting the vaccine?
So there are a number of things to say. One is if you have family members or close friends who are highly susceptible, and we have lots of them in the valley, then even though you may not be at risk for getting the disease or getting it severely, you nevertheless are very much at risk of getting infected and transmitting it to somebody that can cause really severe, even fatal disease. So one has to be considerate, not just for themselves, but for others. Secondly, these vaccines are the result of many years of research. They are not just something that popped out of the hat because of the pandemic. The adenovirus vaccine, in matter of fact, of Johnson & Johnson was approved, that platform was approved for the Ebola vaccine last July. So these are tried and true measures, types of vaccines. The Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccines are new forms, but the research that went into developing those is at least 20 years old. So we are not talking about something that suddenly is created and nobody has tested. In fact, all of these clinical trials required tens of thousands of people who have received the vaccine. And yes, there have been a handful, literally, of people who had severe reactions, but they were people known to have severe allergies. Otherwise, the most they cause, the most side effect is a sore arm and maybe a day of a little bit of discomfort, but that's all. And so there is little reason not to take the vaccine and many reasons to take the vaccine. What we've seen with healthcare workers is there were a number of people, probably 40% or 45% initially, who said, no, I'm not sure. Once they saw their colleagues getting vaccines, now that's increased. I definitely agree with Dr. Castillo. It's over 75% now in the hospitals that I work with on a regular basis who have now been vaccinated. And I think that's going to go up even more.
I'm trying to recall an impressive metric that, and I think it was Dr. James. I think it was you, Dr. James, who told us either that or was Dr. Ivan Melendez, that it was either out of 1 million or 100,000. I apologize, but the number was minuscule. It was like 10 in the other factor, like 100,000 or 1 million of the serious allergic reactions. Was that you, Dr. James, who told us that last time?
Yeah, the risk of having like a serious anaphylactic reaction that you're going to get hospitalized was somewhere between 7 and 10 per million doses.
Million.
Golly.
My goodness, that's almost nothing.
That's a lot lower than getting the chances of getting infected and getting sick.
10-4. Roxanne, I know you have a follow-up. Go ahead.
I do. I want to follow up with you, Dr. McCormick. There's two parts to this question. One, can you still get COVID-19 after getting the vaccine? And then two, once you get the vaccine, I heard Dr. Fauci said that if you get vaccinated, you still need to wear a mask and social distance. So why?
So here's the complexity. First of all, if you look at the results, so these vaccine trials are randomized. So some people get vaccines, some get placebo. They don't get the vaccine. And when you look 10 days after the first dose of the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, the curve for people who got infected in the placebo went, like this. The curve for those who got the vaccine just dropped off right out the bottom. So we know they're very, very effective at preventing disease. Now, they measured disease. They didn't measure infection. That's a much more complicated thing because there you have to do a test about every week. That's really complicated to do. So we don't know for sure whether people can get reinfected. And secondly, even if they can, and there are some viruses where you can because they're a little bit different, and you can get infected even when you're vaccinated. But the question is, do you get infected enough to be able to transmit to someone else? The likelihood of that is very low. Now, data are coming out of Israel and now out of the UK to strongly suggest that, in fact, these viruses do stop transmission. That is, when you're vaccinated, even if you do get infected but nobody detects it, the fact is you don't transmit it to anybody. So I think the evidence is mounting that it prevents disease and it prevents transmission.
I hope that's true. That's real encouraging. Davis, back to you. I know you had a question for Dr. Noyola from Harlem.
For Dr. Noyola, it's said by some districts that young students in particular are not doing well in their classes at home. I don't know what the age break would be, but a 6-year-old is going to have a harder time than a 16-year-old.
I'll tell you, my 8-year-old is a handful right now, Dave. So you can start there. Gee, well, yeah.
No more sugary beverages.
That's true.
So, what do you see about that? And what about just having everybody repeat a year, certain age levels?
You're right, especially the younger ones are going to have a harder time. Learning requires some degree of structure. And so if our little ones have not gone through that process, and, when we start out children in pre-K and kinder, part of that is teaching them structure, right? Because structure is what allows for instruction and all of that to happen. And so, our big concern is our little ones that have not stepped foot on campus, but are having to go through remote instruction. And so we recognize that, as I mentioned earlier, remote instruction is not for everybody. Even for our high school students, doesn't necessarily mean that age means that they're going to be better at it. There are students who just need that face-to-face instruction. To your question about having children repeat a year, our focus is more on finding out what areas they are struggling with and address those. So really focusing more on individualizing instruction to meet that child's needs, because there are some students that do thrive in remote instruction and others that don't. And so the key is for those students that are not doing well in that type of setting, how do we identify what the greatest areas of needs are and then target those needs specifically?
Roxanne, I know you got a follow-up for Dr. Noyola. Go ahead.
I do. We all know the TEA says that the STAR exam must take place on campus. So my question to you, Dr. Noyola, is what can you share about the plan to execute this?
Sure. So the state basically said that if students wanted to participate in the STAR test, that they needed to be on campus. They needed to be present. And so a couple or some background information on that. So there's a number of federal and state laws that require that an assessment be administered to students. And so that's a part that we as a school system, that the state as an overall system has to be in compliance with. But the logistics, and we just had a conversation about how difficult remote instruction can be for students. So the logistics of administering an assessment is very difficult when you try and do that at home. We saw that this past year with other national tests like advanced placement tests and so forth, that there were attempts to be able to do this type of testing at home, and it really was not very successful. And so, I understand the whole thought behind why it's critical to do it in a face-to-face format. And so as we talk about that, and I mentioned earlier how critical it is to identify what each individual child's needs are. And so while a teacher in general can say this child is struggling, this one is not, for that child that is struggling, we need some type of diagnostic to be able to say, for Alicia Noyola, these are your 3 areas of need, so that my teachers next year know exactly what they need to work with me on. And so that's what a STAR test does. It creates a diagnostic. So what we're actually working with is contacting our families and encouraging them to send their children to test. We have done a tremendous job in our district with the protocols. In fact, in December, we administered a STAR test to a number of our high school students. I think we tested a little over 300 students that needed to test. And so many of them were remote students. And so we were able to bring them in controlled settings with all of our protocols in place. Very successful. No issues with transmission or anything like that. But the greatest piece about that opportunity is that we were able to identify what did those children need. Because one thing that the state has not done is taken away the requirement that children have to pass these tests to graduate. And so if we're going to get them to graduation, it's going to be critical to have them in person because there is no other way to do that. And so when we get them in person, because we will get results relatively quick, we'll be able to identify where they're struggling, address that, and get them to the point that we want them to be.
Dr. You said something interesting when you started your comments that if they want to participate. Now, is the STAR optional, or can the school district develop its own assessment exam?
No, it's a state assessment for students to graduate. They have to pass the STAR test, the end of course test in the various areas. So the reason why we emphasize STAR in grades other than the graduation courses is because it's all a buildup. Our whole educational system and academics builds on each other. And so throughout, from the time that they first start testing in third grade all the way to the time that they graduate, the whole process is about getting them to that end point. And so while optional is not the word that the state is using, in essence, they have said if you're a remote, unless you can come and test in person, then there's no test for you. So it's not necessarily optional, but if I'm going to do remote, well, and I can't go in or I won't go in or whatever that situation is, it creates a type of option, I guess.
In order for it to count, it must be taken in person. The student will need to go back to campus. And my wife is an accounting professor. She's going to kill me for saying this, but man, she was really looking forward to acing the STAR exam. And you know how it is at home, moms and dads are helping the kiddos with everything. I'm kidding.
Well, I'll tell you this.
He's a handful. My little one is a handful, I got to tell you.
We have a handful of 18,000, so I'll trade you.
What grades are we talking about, Dr. Noyola? Which grades will need to be testing STAR this year?
Actually, we test in all grades, 3rd through 11th grade, different tests. So one grade level may have math and reading, another grade level may have history, but all grade levels from 3rd grade to 11th grade have a test that's administered. One of the things that the state has done is they have taken away the accountability side of the house. So the only people for whom it truly is high stakes is our seniors that are getting ready to graduate because they need to pass their test. For everybody else, grades 3rd through 11th grade, for them, it's really more within the diagnostic realm. It's so that school districts, when school opens up next year, will have some solid, concrete data on which to base how they will provide instruction next year.
10-4. And when we come back, we'll ask our local health authority and Dr. Mack how confident they are. Yes, hopefully by the fall 21, maybe we can get all the kids back on campus as we continue to trend downward with infections and hospitalizations. You're listening to KURV News Special, COVID vaccines and education. Dr. Elisa Noyola, Harlingen Schools, Dr. James Castillo, Cameron County Health Authority, Dr. Joseph McCormick, Infectious Disease Pro, UT Health Science Center. A big thank you to Bert Ogden and Fiesta Dealerships for providing us today's news program on 710 KURV. Jeff Malden, bertogden.com. From start to finish, choose a vehicle at bertogden.com and even get it delivered at the end. How much time is saved by people doing a lot of work online before they show up and claim their vehicle on campus?
That's the other kind of beauty of the tool we have. Customers, they can start and stop. It's kind of like going to Amazon or going to Target. You can fill your shopping cart, come back later and keep shopping, and the items are still there. As you go through this process on our line, from whether it's selecting a vehicle to inputting your trade-in information to looking at payment options, you can save the transaction up to that point and then revisit it later. So for a lot of our busy consumers, they can kind of start a part of the process and then revisit it. The tool tells them that up to this point, you've saved X number of minutes, X number of hours. It actually translates that into the time spent in a traditional dealership environment. So it gives you instant feedback to what you've just done and how much time you've saved when you actually do show up to the store.
Jeff Malden, bertogden.com.
Some of our dealers are still liquidating our holdover 2020 inventory. And so there's lots of promotions that are out there. Lots of manufacturers are still pushing the 0%. Subaru and Mazda brands and Kia brands that I represent are still pushing 0%. Volvo's got low interest rate stuff out there. A lot of manufacturers are still pushing first responder, healthcare professional, even teacher incentives and discounts for those people that are out there braving all of the risks and so forth are still associated with this pandemic. So a lot of manufacturers are still celebrating first responder, teacher, healthcare professional incentives and discounts. And in the midst of all of this, as we're coming out and as people are getting vaccinated and as we're starting to see people, reach a level of herd immunity, we're here. We're a strong member of this community. And we're here to provide that support, whether it's helping them with a car, or like I said, whether it's just hanging out and, charging your phone when the power went out. We're not just here to sell people cars. We're here to help serve the community and do our part. They've taken very good care of the Bert Ogden family 40 plus years. And that's why we do so much as an organization to try to give back.
From start to finish, purchase, lease your brand new vehicle delivered to you. Visit bertogden.com.
You've made the right choice for news and information. News Talk 710 KURV, KURV.com.
About 4 minutes left in the program. Appreciate you tuning in. News Talk 710 KURV. As soon as we're done with the program, we'll have a chance to post it online. You can check the online broadcast also on SoundCloud. I'm Sergio Sanchez along with Davis Rankin, Roxanne Flores, the KURV crew. Thanks to the Evil Radio Genius, Zach to taking care of the online broadcast, and our producer Fred at taking care of all the calls and all the controls. Dr. Alicia Noyola, Harlingen Schools, Dr. James Castillo, Cameron County Health Authority, Dr. Joseph McCormick, Infectious Disease Pro, UT Health Science Center, at our Brownsville office. Okay, Roxanne, I know we had a follow-up on the medical side. Go ahead.
I do. This question is for Dr. McCormick. Dr. McCormick, Dr. Noyola earlier mentioned that they haven't really seen the student-to-student transmission. So I wanted to ask you, how confident are you, given current trends, we can get all kids back to school this fall, 2021?
Yeah, I'm very confident we'll do that. In fact, the science that's coming in now, and there was a really good study of a group of schools in Wisconsin that the CDC published, and it showed just exactly what Dr. Noyola talked about. If you have if you set everything up correctly, people wear masks, kids wear masks, the teachers wear masks, you practice social distancing, all of those things. In fact, the transmission in that study, and it was a very careful study, was very, very low. And so it's the devil is always in the details. But if you follow those details as prescribed, then I think we'll get back. And I know the new director, Dr. Walensky of CDC, is going to come out, said they're going to come out with new guidelines fairly soon on schools. But I know she's very confident that we'll get the schools reopened, certainly by the fall.
If I could ask Dr. Noyola as a follow-up, based on the comments from Dr. Mack and what everybody's saying about keeping kids apart, 6 feet apart, I know that in a standard schoolroom, there's not enough space for those 20, 25, whatever number of children we have in each room, and you got to keep them 6 feet apart. Are you already thinking ahead, where will you put all the kiddos when they come back? Because when you change classes, the halls get all full of kids. They're going to be shoulder to shoulder, all that. So how did all that work? Are you improvising already?
We are. We've been looking at what next year could potentially look like, because we do anticipate that our students will come back next year. I think as vaccine administration increases and so forth, I think there'll be a lot more confidence. Right now we have 50% of our students, but there's still 50% that are sitting at home that potentially could be coming back in the fall, just because of in general what we're seeing. And so that's a big piece that we're studying. Because while we can take care of everything else, the masks, the sanitizing, the air filtration and so forth, all the things that we are currently doing, that social distancing piece is the one that becomes that much harder, to your point, when you have 20-something, 25 number of kids, which is what we've typically been used to. Yeah. And so that's where we're studying how do we accommodate that for next year, because it's not just a matter of space, it's also a matter of staffing. And so if we're going to split up a class into two, now I need two teachers, not just one, right? And so there's a number of pieces that we have to look at. And as we talk about what that potentially will look like next year, we're exploring all of those options, in that may there be some type of hybrid instructional model. Not hybrid on where kids go, but just looking at different ways that we potentially can address the fact that social distancing may be one of those pieces that we may struggle with a little bit if we don't plan ahead.
Might the school week, the school day change, where you have half the kids going on a morning shift, half the kids going on an afternoon shift thing, or maybe even weekends. I don't know. I would imagine everything's on the table.
So
Dr.
Sergio,
Noyola.
there's one other thing to remember. We have not much in the way of vaccine trials in kids, and so that's going to take some time as well. We know less about vaccines in kids than we do in adults.
10-4. That's Dr. Joseph McCormick. Dr. James Castillo, I'll give you about 20, 30 seconds for a final thought so we can close the program.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to schools, we know that this can affect some children severely, but most do very well with it. We're also worried about what they would do to transmission in the households and to their grandparents. And as we see the vaccine become more available, and the other thing is when a person gets the vaccine, their chances of getting sick enough, if they do get COVID, that they get put in the hospital or that they get life-threatening illness goes way, way down. So as we see the vaccine get to our most vulnerable, then we see over the summer, we're going to see it more widely available to people even without chronic medical problems. I think that'll let us open into the next school year, even if there's transmission in the schools, that we're not going to see it impact in the hospitals, for example. We're not going to see it shut down. So I think that's going to be a huge thing.
10-4.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Mack, closing thought from you, about 30 seconds. Go ahead, sir.
So I think that we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. I can only say to people, keep doing what you're doing, wear your mask, don't congregate when you don't need to. Social distance if you do visit someplace, like now some of the restaurants are opening, make sure they're safe, and be vigilant and get your vaccine as soon as it's available. And I think that's going to be sooner than we might have thought.
10-4. In 30 seconds, Dr. Noyola, thanks for sticking around. Got 2 minutes overtime. Go ahead, Dr. Noyola.
And it's just a recap of what I've shared. I think we still are encouraging our children and our families to consider coming in to take those assessments, because those are going to be critical for our teachers to use as we move back and in bringing our students back and really addressing whatever COVID slide we may wind up seeing throughout this past year. Our kids have been out of school. In March, they will have been out of school for a year.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. I think. Thank you, folks, for participating today. That's Dr. Elisa Noyola, the superintendent at Harlingen Schools. Big thank you to Dr. James Castillo, Cameron County Health Authority, and Dr. Joseph McCormick, UT Health Science Center. I'm Sergio Sanchez with the KURV crew. Thank you to Bert Ogden and Fiesta Dealerships Valley-wide for today's program.